What's good, y'all? It's your boy Havoc. Final round. I mean, what did you expect? What did you expect? Terence Bud Crawford absolutely dominates Errol Spence Jr. I mean, my prediction was pretty spot on. I'm a gloat a little bit. Give me that. My prediction was pretty spot on. I'm actually mad at myself a little bit, though. Because at one point, I did have this a 70-30 fight in Bud Crawford's favor. Okay, I think there's receipts on that. I think you can look at some of my past videos on this, on the possible matchup between these two. And I believe at one point I was saying this is going to be a 70-30 fight in Bud Crawford's favor. But let's give a round of applause. Let's give a round of applause to Spence fans. Because you guys did a phenomenal, and I'm not just talking about like Spence fans, casual Spence fans. I'm talking about the hardcore, crazy, delusional Spence fans that thought I was crazy. Okay, I want to give them a round of applause because they actually convinced us that this fight was going to be close. They convinced me because all they said was, "You're crazy. You're crazy for thinking Terence Crawford can knock out Spence. You're crazy if you think this isn't going to be a competitive fight. You're crazy if you think he can knock them down in the first few rounds. You are crazy, Harrison. You're absolutely crazy." And you're unbiased. You're a Crawford fanboy. I'm like, dude, hold up. I'm not from Omaha, Nebraska. I have no ties to any of these guys. I've never been to their fights. I don't have any fan gear. I'm just calling it like I see it, objectively. But you know what? I was like, maybe, am I being biased? Like, am I being delusional? Is there something like I'm not seeing? Like this guy, Terence Crawford, he's a switch hitter. He brought his power up from the lower weight classes. He's got speed. He's got footwork. He can move forward, backward, laterally. He can sit in the pocket. He can bang with you. He's a great inside fighter. He can throw combinations. He can pot shot. He can do it all. And what am I not seeing compared to Spence, who's a one-dimensional fighter? Who just stays behind his jab, keeps a high guard, and he puts pressure and he attacks you to the body. What am I like? Yeah, I choose that guy. The guy who can do a lot of things. I thought that was pretty straightforward. That was my assessment. It's just like, I keep on using it. I keep on using this example. Do you want a military with the Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, Space Force? Or do you want a military with just an army? I think it's pretty straightforward. I'm not being biased. I'm just picking the guy who I think is clearly better. Well, Spence is bigger. Spence is strong. Spence punches hard. What are you guys in elementary school? Like this, we're not talking about a street fight with inexperienced fighters. We're talking about boxing. This sport requires skills and technique. Yes, toughness, aggression, punching hard can be a part of it. Taking punches can be a part of it. That's obviously a huge aspect of the sport, but it doesn't encompass the whole sport, you guys. It doesn't encompass the whole sport. If you start sparring, okay, and you've never sparred before, you spar against somebody who actually has, skills and technique and experience within the sport, you're gonna realize, like, oh my God, there's more to this than just being a tough SOB. There's more to it. And when you look at Terence Crawford, he's a complex fighter, man. And I don't care how big Spence was. I don't care how tough he is. I don't care how aggressive and how much he steps to you. When you got a guy who can think very intelligently in that ring and move around and make adjustments and He brings his power up from a lower weight class, and he throws punches and bunches, combination. He can stick and move. He can put pressure. He can fight in the pocket. He can fight off the back foot. He has every punch in the arsenal, both power in both hands. What are you not computing? This guy's a generational talent. I said, don't be surprised if Crawford walks Spence down. I said, don't be surprised if you come to figure out that Crawford's a better inside fighter. Spence fans said I was crazy for thinking that Crawford's a better inside fighter. You just watch Crawford shove Spence like a little kid across the ring and dog him on the inside. Absolutely dog, because he has countering abilities Spence doesn't have. What did you not compute? When somebody, look, I'm not Nostradamus. I don't know. I don't make 100% correct predictions, but I like to think that my assessments are fair, even when I'm wrong. They're fair, okay? And they're unbiased. And I'm giving you my perspective from the experience I have within the sport and what I study and watch. Shame on these other channels who try to mislead their viewers or push an agenda and tell the fanboys what they want to hear. Okay, shame on them, because people are so crazy. Okay, people are so crazy. They're crazy fans out here that will bet their whole savings and house and car on some of these fighters. And that, you do not make sports bets off of emotion or being a fan. Okay, you might as well get a lottery ticket for that. You'll have a better chance. And then on top of that, you're going to lose lots of money in the process. You have to pick rationally. You have to pick based off of the circumstances, the matchup, the style, the technique. You don't pick off being a fan, or you're going to end up like Charlo or Adrian Broner. Charlo put, what, $25,000 because he's boys with Spence? That's cute. But I ain't putting $25,000. I wouldn't have put $25,000 on that fight. I'll be there to support you, but I ain't putting $25,000 if I see you got a tough matchup that's not in your favor. If you want honest, clear assessments, I can't promise you I'm going to be 100% correct on all my predictions, but I can promise you I'm going to be as fair as possible. Once again, I'm not from Omaha, Nebraska. I wasn't from Texas. I don't have any of the fan gear for any of these fighters. I just call it like I see it. Look, I'm a Dallas kid. We need fans. We need hardcore fans in boxing. I love boxing fans. I want you to support your fighter. But all I'm saying is, look, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, but I ain't delusional. And you know how painful it's been for Dallas Cowboys fans for 20 years. But in no shape or form are you going to convince me that they're not choke artists. The Dallas Cowboys, as much as a fan I am, I'll go to the game if they come locally. I'll wear the jersey. I'll support them. I'll have hopes that they win a Super Bowl again one day. But by no stretch of the imagination am I going to be so deluded, okay, to be convinced to say the Dallas Cowboys are the best team this year and they're going to win the Super Bowl. Because I know damn well they're choke artists. And until they prove me wrong, I love my Cowboys, but until they prove me wrong and they go to the playoffs and get over that hump and win the Super Bowl, they will be choke artists to me. Because that's the reality of the situation. And I don't know if they need to wait till Jerry Jones passes. God forbid. I don't mean it like that. But I'm just saying maybe new management needs to come in town. The Dallas Cowboys are what they are. And as much as I'm a fan of the Dallas Cowboys, I'm not going to be delusional. And that's all I'm saying. Be a fan, man. Support your fighter. Go to the fight. Wear the gear. Hope they win. But don't be delusional. Don't get mad at people who have experience in the sport who are just trying to assess the matchup and call them haters. Don't bet your whole damn house or listen to these stupid YouTube channels. I'm not even gonna name them, but don't listen to these ridiculous YouTube channels that just tell you what you want to hear, and then you end up being convinced that Deontay Wilder is gonna knock out Tyson Fury. Okay, and there's a high percentage chance of that. I mean, that's not so much crazy because, obviously Wilder had power, but, that's for another story. The fact of the matter is, we knew who the better fighter was based off of the style, the matchup, the technique. The same it was with Crawford and Spence. Look, man, this guy's a generational talent. I kept on using the example, and I'll continue to use it in other stylistic matchups. Do you want a military that has multiple branches? An Army, a Navy, Marines, Air Force, Space Force, Coast Guard. That's that guy sitting right there. He has it all. Switch hitter. Brought his power up in weight class. Speed, technique, IQ off the charts. Defense, phenomenal. Footwork, phenomenal. Everything you can name. Or do you want Errol Spence? A guy with a big army, but that's all he has. I don't know. For me, I want options. In this sport of boxing, you need to make adjustments. You have to make adjustments. And the guy who can make adjustments gives himself more opportunities to win the fight. Should there be a rematch? Hell no. Hell no. I mean, I pray for Spence if he asks for a rematch. That dude, he has a family. Dude, you made enough money. I think he should retire. What do you got left to fight for? If you want to continue to make money, fine. I get it. And I get if Spence takes the rematch. It's a lot of money on the table. But, I mean, you can sell your soul to the devil. Just understand the consequences. And that devil might be for money. So do as you please, Spence. But, I mean, how do you take a what are you hanging your hat off of? What, weight? That's another thing we got to address here. Like, oh, Spence is bigger, stronger. That's your argument to beat this generational type, Hall of Famer, generational type talent in Terence Crawford? He's bigger and stronger. First of all, I didn't even see that much of a discrepancy in size. Second of all, Terence Crawford has a longer reach. The size thing went out the window. And even if he didn't, I don't think it would have mattered if Spence had a longer reach. This guy's a superior boxer. And I told you, look at the intangibles. Look at the stylistic matchup. There's tougher fights out there for Crawford than Spence. And I said it, the stylistic matchup, this does not favor Spence. He's a pressure fighter. He's one-dimensional. You're going up against one of the best counterpunchers I've ever seen. And he's a dog himself. He can fight on the inside. I said, don't be surprised if Crawford walks Spence down. Well, what happened? I said, don't be surprised if a knockout comes early on in the fight. Or if Spence gets knocked down. Well, what happened? I said, don't be surprised if Crawford's a better inside fighter than Spence. I think Spence is significantly overrated in terms of his inside fighting, because inside fighting requires being a phenomenal counterpuncher, which Spence is not. Oh, you think size is going to be the difference, but going up to 154, that's going to get Crawford or Spence to win? You're going to be heavily disappointed again. It's not going to make a difference. Could be worse. I don't know what Spence is hanging his hat off of. Okay? Thinking that he can be competitive in a rematch. Maybe this is a money grab. But he got absolutely outclassed. He looked like an amateur from the get-go. And I actually felt sorry for him. I don't say that callously. I felt bad for Spence in that fight. It was hard to watch him get beat down like that. It was sad, and it was hard to watch. And you can even see the fans in the stands as the fight continued to get later. They were starting to cringe. It was hard for them to watch as well. And I'm glad the referee finally stepped in and stopped it, because that was getting really bad. He looked like Spence looked like, if you watched Martin back in the 90s, I think it was. And Martin was talking shit to Tommy Hearns, had a boxing match with Tommy Hearns. That sitcom, black sitcom on TV. Martin went in a boxing match with Tommy Hearns, and after the match, he got all beaten and battered up, and his face got completely disfigured. That's what Spence looked like. Go look it up on Google. There's memes of it. Martin Tommy versus Tommy Hearns. Hilarious. But that's what it looked like, man. It didn't look good for Spence, and he wasn't even in the same dimension as Crawford. And I don't know what he has as what hope he has in a rematch, or what he can look back on that fight and say, you know what, I can do this better. Maybe it was one of those nights where you were just off, but I'm telling you, man, it wasn't that. You just aren't on this dude's level. You're not on his level. You got outclassed. You got to think about this. And I'll break this down in another video if they're talking about the rematch and the potential of it. I won't get too heavy into details, but by the way, like, comment, subscribe if you're new. But moving forward, if there's a rematch, you got to think about this, man. Spence is going to have to spend a significant amount of time with his trainer. And I'm going to make another video on Derek James. Absolutely shameful what he did. But you two got to go back to the drawing board, and you got to figure out how to fix what happened in this fight. And I'm telling you right now, Crawford was so intelligent and smart. He probably knew there's a potential for a rematch. He kind of walked Spence through that fight, and he didn't even show Spence anything. He stayed in the southpaw stance, didn't even switch it up. He pretty much just established his jab, countered Spence's jab with his hook, and then when he established his jab, follow up with 1-2s and 1-2-3s. Jab cross hooks, right? Very straightforward. This wasn't a complex game plan. You know, Terence Crawford said, I'm going to come in southpaw stance, you know, and I'm just going to outbox him in a very amateurish. I'm not saying what Crawford was doing amateurish, but I'm saying it was almost like watching a masterclass boxer introduce an amateur into the professional ranks. You know, it looked like he was walking him through the fight. Crawford didn't even show you anything. So even if Spence does make the adjustments, he's going to come back in the fight. And let's go there. Let's get crazy. Let's get hypothetically crazy. Let's say if Spence finds a way to counter what Bud did in the first fight. You're still screwed, because Bud is going to pull out something else. And he's 10 steps ahead of you. And even if you figure out his second level, he's got a third level. You figure out his third level, he's got a fourth. You figure out his fourth, he's got a fifth. And here's the scary part. He can switch back and forth and interchange that all throughout a fight. This is chess, not checkers. He's 10 steps ahead of Spence. And even if Spence gets to his first level, there's 10 more levels to go. And then he can go back and forth and shapeshift into different things. He can change his rhythm. He can change his timing. He can change his stance. He can change his style. He can come forward. He can go backward. He can bang in the pocket. He can go lateral. He can be a dog and brawl. How you really think you're going to come back in a rematch? And even if you just figure out what he did in the first fight, you're not even in the same universe. So no, I don't think there should be a rematch unless he's just trying to get the money grab. But we'll talk about Derek James. Very shameful what he did. Overrated trainer. Never saw what most people saw in him. I thought it was absolutely pitiful that he didn't try to get the fight stopped early. I heard something as if, somebody told me he couldn't throw in the towel for some reason, or some rules in place. I call bullshit. He could have had that fight stopped one way or another if he really wanted to be stopped. But to be fair, I'm not saying I'm glad that it didn't get stopped, because I think a lot of credit would have been taken away from Crawford if the fight was stopped too early. But I'm just saying, for Derrick James, if you really wanted a rematch and you really wanted to protect your fighter's health and well-being and give him a better chance in the rematch, you should have stopped that fight way more earlier than it should have been stopped. Somehow, some way. I don't know. Do something. Jump in the ring. Because if you love that man and if you care about his future and if you care about his family and his kids, you jump in that ring and you stop that fight. It should have been stopped way earlier. And if you want him to go back in a rematch and put a better performance, don't let him take an absolute beating that he probably will never be the same from. So shame on Derrick James. I have no idea why Anthony Joshua, Ryan Garcia, and all these fighters flock to his stable. I think he's overrated. I don't see what he does very well. And the last thing I want to mention is defense. You know, you guys said that Crawford has bad defense. I don't understand why. Just because he got clipped a few times, and then you got to put it into context. Why is he getting clips? Because he's taking chances. He's hanging in that pocket. He's trying to see the punches coming so he can figure out the holes in your game to counter you with effective shots. And you have to hang in that pocket a little longer. You have to risk it to get the biscuit, okay? And actually, there's one more note before I close this video, and I'm going to make a separate video for this. Boots Ennis versus Terence Crawford. Now, I know this fight is going to be hard to make because Boots is still kind of building his resume, and I can't quite say that he has earned his right to fight Terence Crawford in terms of his resume, but I definitely think he is the best shot to give Terence Crawford his toughest fight. I think Boots can win. Now, I'm waiting for the backlash. Bring it on. You guys told me I was crazy. You guys told me I was crazy that Terence Crawford was a significantly better fighter than Errol Spence. And I'm telling you right now, Boots Ennis is the truth. He's the only guy who can give Bud Crawford his toughest fight. I'm not saying necessarily that Boots beats Bud. I have Bud over Boots. But I'm telling you, this is a 50-50 fight. This, at least a 60-40. This is a competitive fight. Stop looking at the resumes. Stop looking at the experience and look at the technique. Look at the stylistic matchup. Yes, and then you can start to factor in all the other things. These two are very similar. Only you got a younger guy who's just as big, or if not bigger, and rangier, and maybe more athletic than Bud Crawford. But where Bud Crawford, and younger, but where Bud Crawford would have the advantage is that he's experienced and he's very high IQ'd. I think he's more disciplined than Boots. And I'll get into that in a separate video. Bud versus Boots. I'm telling you right now, Boots is the biggest threat to Bud Crawford. This fight would be amazing. The stylistic matchup, the techniques involved, both of them are very similar. You have both who are switch hitters, both of them very athletic, very talented. Both of them can fight on the inside, can do different things stylistically, fight on the outside, lateral movement. They do it all. They're very, very similar. This would be like watching Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter in real life. Can you imagine this fight? This is not a slow prodding fighter like Spence that comes forward and that's one-dimensional. These are two fighters who are very dynamic, both have speed, both have power, both have dog in them. The only difference is experience and discipline. We'll get into that for another video. Be on the lookout for it. This is your boy Havoc with Final Round. Congrats to Terence Crawford. Pound for pound, the best fighter in the world today. Future Hall of Famer. And you know what? Let's lift Errol Spence's spirits up. That dude is tough. As much as everybody's kind of making fun of him and, you know, talking shit about him, look, that dude's a great fighter. He's a world-class championship fighter. He's done some great things in the sport. You know, whatever he decides to do, I'm going to support it. I like Errol Spence, and you saw his character through that fight. Unfortunately, he went up against a guy who's just completely on a different level. But like the video, comment down below, subscribe, tell me what you think. Be on the lookout for future videos. We're going to start putting some more videos out there, Trent. I'm a busy man, a very busy man, so I apologize that I haven't been putting too much content. I love you guys. Stay safe. Keep watching. Peace.